So after climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, I was looking for my next challenge, and I decided on climbing Mount Elbrus via the more remote and, dare I say it, more difficult northern route. What can I say? I'm a glutton for punishment. So the main question I get when I say I want to climb Mount Elbrus is, where is it? So Mount Elbrus is a dormant volcano that lies in the Caucasus mountain range in southern Russia, close to the border with Georgia. It's 5,642 meters, 18,510 feet above sea level. It's the highest mountain in Europe, it's the highest mountain in Russia, it's one of the 7 summits, it's one of the 7 volcanic summits, and also, as it turns out, nothing like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So after packing what seemed like everything I own into 2 rucksacks, all of which is to be carried to high camp by yours truly, I was finally ready for the off. I flew from London to Moscow, where I would meet the rest of the group. From there we flew to Minerali Vodi, where as we approached the airport we could see Mount Elbrus, the enormous lump of rock and ice which we would call home for the next 6 days, poking through the clouds. So after a short but terrifying drive, we arrived at the pretty Russian tourist town of Kislovodsk, staying in the pleasant and aptly named La Bristol Hotel. We spent the night exploring the wonders of Kislovodsk, before having an early night to head off to base camp the next morning. The trip to base camp took us through some of the most spectacular and rugged scenery I've ever seen. The drive took us about 3 hours, 2 of which on road and an hour of which on not road, culminating in a river crossing as we approached base camp. Of course, none of this was a problem for our indestructible Russian-made all-terrain minibus and trailer. We'd seen many new things over the first 2 days, but it wasn't until we saw a very muscular 13-year-old riding a horse topless, whilst his dad, wearing nothing but his pants and a t-shirt tan, drank vodka from the back of his Lada, did we realise we'd finally arrived in Russia.
So we've arrived at Elbrus Northside Base Camp, 2,550 meters, and a 4-hour drive from Kislovodsk, where we left from this morning. The roads were not really roads, it's quite the off-road experience. I think one of the main challenges before getting on the mountain is actually getting here, because these Russians have quite a unique driving style, but it's quite beautiful here. Elbrus is actually just behind me here, but you can't see it because it's totally covered in cloud, but the base camp's quite extensive, which is cool.
After arriving at base camp, we went for a short 4-hour walk down the valley to take in our surroundings and check out some of the spectacular waterfalls which are fed by the annual melt of the glaciers high up in the mountain.
So it's a beautiful morning at Elbrus Base Camp today. Had a pretty good sleep last night, got maybe 4 or 5 hours, but it was a little bit too warm. But sleeping in a cabin is much more comfortable than sleeping in a tent, which is good. So we got a good look at some Germans. Got to see the west and east summit this morning. So we're going to do one of our carries up to the high camp today, which is about 4,000 meters. So we'll take half of our stuff up today, have lunch up there and come back down to base camp for dinner and sleep before we head up to the high camp again tomorrow. So this is the canteen. The kitchen at the back. And would you believe it? A genuine bar with beer on tap. There are the toilets, they're best unseen. And here is our cabin, here's the maid.
Day 1 took us from base camp at 2,500 meters to high camp at around 3,800 meters with our first load of kit. Starting in the grasslands and following the river up before crossing a flat plateau and then starting the long ascent up to the glacier and then eventually high camp.
This is tougher than I thought. It was day 1. Up to the high camp, the best part of 4,000 meters, which I guess about 13,000 feet. It took us 4 hours to get out here from the base camp, and it was nails is how I'd describe it. The last 400 meters was really loose, scree, carrying about 20 kilos, and the air's getting pretty thin. You can see Elbrus behind me, and it's all starting to get pretty real. It's really big. Had lunch at high camp and dropped off all our stuff from the first carry, and now we're going to take basically empty bags back down to base camp as Armin, where we're going to spend the night. So it's quite a relief to get rid of all that because it's heavy.
We took a different, more gentle route down, which took us through a field of mushroom-shaped rocks. It gave us all a good opportunity to have some rest and for the posers among us to have their photos taken for the gram. We arrived back in base camp just in time for dinner. And after a fairly intense Jenga session, everyone was ready for an early night.
So today is our last morning in base camp. Had a really good sleep last night, about 7-8 hours, which I'm really happy about, but not surprised because I was knackered yesterday. We're doing our second carry up to high camp today, where we will be spending the rest of the time. Really happy about the fact that I took way too much up yesterday, which means that my bag is a fraction of the weight that I took up yesterday, so it's going to be quite a leisurely stroll up to the high camp. So yeah, Good day, looking forward to it. So we climbed this section yesterday. It's super steep and it starts from the bottom here all the way up here, all the way along there, all the way up there, and all the way up there. And these Russian guys don't take any prisoners and they don't like to stop, so it's pretty tough. It doesn't have an official name, this part of the climb, but let's just call it Bastard. So these guys are our guides up to the summit. How many times have you been to Everest summit?
So I've been in 4 times top of the Elbrus.
Yeah. And you?
I have 3 times summit.
3 times?
Yeah.
So we're in good hands going up to Elbrus.
Yeah,
it's all good?
Yeah, everything's good.
This is the last bit up to high camp, which is up there where those people are. It's about a 500-meter climb, and every single step sucks from here on up because it is totally loose scree the whole way. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Absolutely horrendous. Camp. Took us 4 hours on the dot to get up here. Base camp. It's slightly easier. So this is our accommodation at High Camp. There's 14 of us in there. I'm just down here with the Germans. Gotta have a little kraut sandwich this evening. And if we go out at the smallest door in the world, we see Elbrus summit and the glacier. And the rest hiking. Lovely toilets down there. And through here is the canteen where we're having lunch. Just going through our equipment check before we go up to Lens Rocks tomorrow. So checking the crampons, checking the boots, checking the harnesses, the cords and everything before we go up to Lens Rocks up there for acclimatization tomorrow. Only in Russia at an advanced base camp will you find white rum for sale, wine, Polana, Guinness,
After a delicious meal of buckwheat and beef, we were treated to a fairly spectacular sunset above the clouds in the shadow of the Elbrus summits.
So we're just about to do our acclimatization hike to Lens Rocks. Everyone's just getting ready And all the harness is on. Shit's about to get real. But it's a beautiful day, so all good.
So our hike up to Lens Rocks would take us from 3,800 metres to around 4,700 metres high up on the glacier. The route from High Camp is pretty much a straight, steep line up the glacier, which we would do in 2 rope teams, with our lead guide Vasily leading one and our Sherpa Tashi leading the other.
We're about 3/4 of the way up to Lens Rocks. There. Yeah. It's about the best part of 5,000. And the summit is just there. Kind of sucks that we have to go back down. Oh, we made it to Lens Rocks in 3 hours. It's meant to take 4. How's Team Moscow? It's kind of windy up here. The summit is over there somewhere, but you can't see it. But we've come up nearly 1,000 meters from the high camp. Yeah, continuing with the theme of spring nails. So we made it back from Lens Rocks within 4 hours. So it was 4 hours up and down, which I was really happy with because it's meant to take 6 hours. So I thought I'd treat myself to a clean pair of underwear and a shower. Now this camp is actually meant to have warm showers because it has a water heater just here. But seeing as it's 4,000 meters above sea level, it's like this pretty much all the time, and you can't really see, but it's snowing, and I'd say it's probably hovering around freezing. So there I was, all excited to have my lovely warm shower until I was told that the shower actually doesn't work, and I was presented with that bucket, wherever it is. Yeah, presented with that bucket right there, with a saucepan, which was quite a harrowing experience, but you know, you gotta treat yourself. It's the small things. So we're making our second hike up to Lens Rocks today to basically start the summit attempt, because we're spreading it out over 2 days. Woke up this morning feeling pretty shit, so hopefully it'll go alright. How you feeling, Armin?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Ready for the climb.
You ready for it?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
The climb up to Lens Rocks was every bit as difficult as the previous day, though we were fortunate with good weather. Once we arrived, we started to pitch our tent at around 4,900 metres or 16,000 feet, making what was in all likelihood the highest campsite in Europe. It was here where we would spend a rather cold and uneasy night before heading to the summit.
So we're at our Lens Rocks campsite now, which is about 5,000 metres. Just cooking up some snow for drinking water tomorrow, which tastes delicious. got all the tents set up. It's not too cold at the moment, it's probably only about -1, -2. It's snowing a bit. Expecting it to get a lot colder later, and I think we're heading off for the summit at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Should take us 6 hours to get there.
So it turned out that once the sun went down, the temperature went down to about -20, leaving the tent and our sleeping bags covered in ice.
So this is our tent this morning, covered in snow. Wasn't too windy in the tent, but you could just hear the winds howling over the summit all night long. It's pretty cold.
Our summit day would take us from our campsite at Lens Rocks, across the glacier and up to the saddle in 3 rope teams. From there, we would unrope and clip onto the fixed lines before heading up to the western summit, the highest point in Europe. We started our summit push from our camp at Lens Rocks at 3 AM in total darkness and freezing conditions. The climb up to the saddle from our camp was very long and very steep. As we ascended, the snow got deeper and harder to negotiate. Every misstep felt like an enormous effort to correct, zapping everybody's energy. It was absolutely exhausting and seemingly never ending. I had to occupy my mind to keep from being consumed with the desire to turn back. All I could think was left foot, right foot, poles, left foot, right foot, poles, left foot, right foot, poles. I'd never been so relieved to see the sun come up, to feel its warmth and to be able to look down and see the progress we had made during the night. The view looking down on the rest of the Caucasus mountain range was incredible, but we still had a way to go, so after what was apparently a confusing break to force down a cliff bar, we carried on to the saddle.
So there's the eastern summit, and there's the western summit. We're on the saddle at the moment. How long did it take us to get up there? 4 hours? Took us 4 hours to get up there, and it was fucking nails. And we've still got another 2 hours left. But I'm not coming this far without having a crack at the summit.
The last section from the saddle to the summit follows fixed lines up a very steep 200-metre ascent, where it levels off before a gentle slope up to the summit. The last section, although short in terms of distance, took 2 hours, and despite having climbed Kitty, which is higher, 8 months previously, I had never felt the effects of altitude like I did on that final stretch on Elbrus, but I wouldn't be beaten. We reached the summit at 9:30 AM, 6.5 hours after we left our camp at Lens Rocks. We were blessed with perfect weather, offering unhindered views of the surrounding mountains. I had never felt so proud to have made it to the top of Europe with such an amazing group of people.
So we've just come down a bit from the summit. Definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. Just got to get down now, which would take 2 days.
The journey down from the summit was not without incident, but finally, after a long 4 hours, we were all safely back at high camp, with, thankfully, no one in our team needing the assistance of the rescue helicopter.
So we say goodbye to the high camp now and the peaks behind us to go down to base camp before we get the bus back to Kislovodsk. After the events of yesterday, can't say I'm not relieved. So yeah, only a couple more hours and then back on the bus.
After a good night's rest, we continued back down to base camp. We were all exhausted, but still buzzing from what we had achieved the previous day. We had been to the top of Europe and experienced things few others have. The mountain very nearly got the better of me, but I'll take what it has taught me and learn from it for the next one, wherever it may be. But for now, to coin a phrase, Mount Elbrus completed it, mate.
you.